The great, the great silence at the beginning when the four of us were talking about what we were going to do today, and we were the idea of home and homecoming being, in a way, the destination of your practice, even if you didn't know that would be the destination. And I've heard Kensho described in that way, Kensho being the great homecoming, how we're no longer exiling ourselves from our life. And in every direction we look, if we look into our past, it no longer is seen as the wrong history, or in the moment I'm in, or into the future I might be imagining. Originally, our original nature is at home. We don't, I think that maybe is the discovery of our practice, is that we think we need to try to get into my true life. And through the practice, we realize that I was always at home. Originally, I was always at home. My original nature is being at home. And all the ways I now see in which I exiled myself. And our practice is a continual discovery of my own coming and going, passing back and forth between home and exile. I remember, I think it was a few months ago, and I believe it was Tess who asked me this question. And I moved to, I left Santa Barbara about, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago or so, 4.5 years. And part of my psyche I left is still there in some way. And I dream about the mountains of Santa Barbara on fire, or I dream about, I even dreamed last night about some great disaster happening, and I'm halfway to Northern California. So I think we're always working this question out. And she asked me once, Tess, well, is there a place, did you ever have a place where you felt at home? And so I sifted through all the homes I'd lived in, many, many homes. And I thought, not there, not the Palisades, not Holmby Hills, not Santa Cruz, not on the Mesa, not where I am. And then I found this one place, which was utterly surprising to me, where I had felt at home. And this was whenever I was in a campsite in the High Sierra, I felt utterly at home. And I think what that was and what that is that nothing in my mind was finding fault. Nothing in my mind was exiling itself from where I was. So I think that's a beautiful aspect of our practice, is to hold it that way, of how am I making this moment the wrong place for me to reside. I was also thinking about Jessie and Hawaii, and Michelle. Right before we got on, Michelle was saying, "Oh, now Jesse, you're in Hawaii, so you're really far away now. When you were in Washington, you were a lot closer." And I realized suddenly I thought when Jesse is moving to Hawaii that now he's much closer than he was than in Washington, and that's because when I was in first grade, we lived in Hawaii for a year. So Hawaii, some part of me is always at home in Hawaii. And now Jesse lives in the neighborhood. And one more short thing before we sit a little bit. Jesse was talking about how there's this feeling of you either that's very strong in the island culture where you're either an insider or you're an outsider. You're haole or you're a local. And it's always a prized thing to be, recognized as a local. And I remember that from so many times going back to the islands through my life. And I was there in Hawaii just before the pandemic, just about a month before everything got locked down. I was there with my brother, one of my brothers, and my sister and their spouses. And we went to a farmer's market, a local farmer's market where they were selling honey and local coffee and bouquets of flowers. And I'm at one of the little booths, and some guy who's clearly a local, he comes up to me and he says, um, uh, "Are you a local?" He said, "You walk like a local man. I can tell you're a local." Some part of me was so suddenly flattered. It's like I'd gotten the golden ticket. I was in. I was a local, and it was evident by the way I walked. And I thought the temptation of the ranking, whether I'm inside or outside, that as soon as I say it doesn't matter whether you place yourself outside or inside, either I'm exiled and I'm not a local, or I'm a local and I've exiled everyone else. So a part of my life will be in exile in that ranking of in or out. And before I was recognized as a local, I was just here.